Saint Stanislaus of Skepenow, a bishop and martyr. The prophecy of his great importance for the Polish Church is already present in his very name, Stanislaus. He is the one who is to become famous. Saint Stanislaus is venerated by the Roman Catholic Church all over the world on April 11, that is on the day of his death. In Poland, the 8th of May is additionally celebrated with a liturgical feast connected with veneration of the saint's relics which are kept in churches and other places of worship in the country. Saint Stanislaus is one of the most important Polish saints. Together with Saint Adalbert and the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Queen of Poland, they create a group of primary patron saints of Poland. His intercession is invoked by archdioceses, dioceses and cities, including Krakow and Ostrowiecki. Thus, Saint Stanislaus is the patron saint of all Poles. Abstinence and people struggling with addictions, especially with alcoholism, consider Saint Stanislaus their patron. He is also the patron saint of the movement Kruczata Wyzwolenia Człowieka, Crusade for the Liberation of Man, which promotes sobriety and avoidance of stimulants and drugs. Stanislaus was the long-awaited and only son of Władysław and Bogna. Although his parents were of noble birth, they were not wealthy people. Stanislaus together with his parents worked in the field since he was a child. Apart from his obedience and piety, the boy also had a thirst for knowledge and a desire to learn. Therefore, his parents decided to send him to school, which at that time meant huge expenses and great sacrifice for the family. However, the future saint did not disappoint his parents and teachers. His diligence allowed him to advance in his education, from the cathedral school in Krakow, through Gniezno, to Liege in Belgium, which at that time was an important center of religious and scientific life. Stanislaus was only 25 when he graduated from the difficult theological studies. He returned to Krakow and became a personal chancellor of Bishop Lambert. He was ordained a priest by Bishop Lambert and was chosen as his successor. Despite the opportunity of an easy career, the saint chose a more difficult path. He decided to convert pagan Lesser Poland to Christianity. He was then responsible for running the cathedral library and school. It was then that the future King Bolesław the Generous paid attention to the talented young man and made him his personal chaplain. In this way Stanislaus entered the court. At the age of 35, after Lambert's death, Stanislaus became the Bishop of Krakow. He was responsible for the construction of Worel Cathedral. When he noticed the important role of convent schools in the education and conversion of people, he became their guardian, especially of Benedictine monasteries. He also proved to be a talented politician as his actions raised the importance of Poland in the international scene. He brought papal legates to the country at the same time, making Poland an important center of Christianity. Stanislaus re-established a metropolitan archdiocese of Gniezno, thus making the Polish Church independent of the Magdeburg bishops. Eventually, he led to the coronation of his ruler, Bolesław II the Generous. However, all those deliberate moves and right decisions did not protect him from the royal wrath to which he exposed himself by clearly expressing his views, different from the monarch's ones. Stanislaus pointed out that the king, absorbed by warfare, behaved immorally, and it caused the decline in morals among his soldiers. The prolonged absence of soldiers from home led to family breakdowns, desertions, and marital infidelity, both on the part of the abandoned wives and the longing husbands. The conflict was also fueled by political issues. Stanislaus was in favor of strengthening the position of the church and the mighty citizens, which resulted in strong opposition of the king. At last Bolesław the Generous decided to try Stanislaus for treason. The clergyman, however, failed to enter an appearance as the church law of that time did not allow him to do so. It annoyed the king so much that he sentenced Stanislaus to a cruel death by dismemberment. The execution was to take place in Skałka Church in Krakow, during a mass celebrated by Stanislaus with the intention of converting the king and atoning for his sins. The henchman entered the church and struck the bishop on the head with a sword, which was a deadly blow. Some accounts suggest that the murder was committed by the King Bolesław himself. He then ordered to chop off the limbs from the saint's body and scatter them. The faithful buried the bishop. 10 years later, when the remains were transferred to Worel, it was discovered with astonishment that his arms, legs, and head had reintegrated with the body. After the murder of Stanislaus, the king lost support and was soon deprived of power. The country plunged into the feudal fragmentation for hundreds of years. The dismemberment and reintegration of the bishop's body began to be interpreted as a sign of impending problems, but also as a promise of the country's reunification. It is believed that Stanislaus performed his first miracle while he was still alive. He had purchased for the diocese a piece of land from a landowner Piotrowin of Janiszew. However, the purchase document got lost, and after Piotrowin's death the land was claimed by his family. Stanislaus spent 3 days praying and then went to the grave of the contractor. He resurrected Piotrowin so that he could testify in court that the sale had indeed taken place. After Stanislaus' death, miracles of national importance began to be credited to him. He was supposed to be responsible for the victory at Grunwald and for the prosperity of the reign of Sigismund I the Old. Initially, the body of the saint rested in Skalka Church, but after 10 years it was transferred to the Worel Cathedral. The relics of Stanislaus were then placed in numerous churches which chose him as their patron saint. The bishop was canonized 174 years after his death, and in the 1960s he was proclaimed the primary patron of Poland. Attributes of Saint Stanislaus are: a crozier, a palm, a white eagle. Piotrowin, Peter. The crozier is a symbol of episcopal dignity. The palm stands for both triumph and martyrdom. The white eagle represents Poland, of which Saint Stanislaus is the primary patron saint, and the country's welfare that was so important to him. The small figure at the saint's feet is Piotrowin, the landowner resurrected by Stanislaus to testify to the bishop's truthfulness before the court.